Given the era we're talking about, did drug use play any part in Python, or was it, given again this plays into the fact that you're all at the latter stages of your 20s at this point, maybe that's behind you?
No.
Eric Idle.
Drugs were not really an issue. In fact, when we got to North America, it was kind of extraordinary to find that everybody assumed that we were totally stoned all the time while making it up. And you have to point out to people that actually you can't write comedy when you're stoned. But a lot of people still, they say to this day, say, oh, when I was a college kid, man, we'd just get a joint and watch Python and we'd just laugh and laugh and laugh. And you think, well, actually you didn't really need Python. You just look at the wallpaper. But it wasn't, Python's always been office hours. 10 to 5, 9 to 5. Even writing the movies, we'd do that. We never wrote late or late nights. So it was very disciplined, very, very disciplined and self-disciplined. No drugs at all, actually, apart from alcohol. But even then, during the creation of it, there wasn't a lot of alcohol, maybe on filming and things like that, people away from home. But the audience, I think, were very stoned.
How important was education to British comedy and Python in particular at this time? I mean, how much of a factor do you think that background, that area?
Yeah, I think it was very big in a way, because I think it was partly what got us interested in it, in that it was kind of literate comedy. And you knew Beyond the Fringe had come from a kind of very literate thing, and the jokes were... Well, you'd had this sort of... Beyond the Fringe had sparked this whole satire movement, really, which was comedy about something, because it was making fun of the government, or it was actually had targets. So you could see that comedy wasn't just something that, was fun, ha-ha. It kind of seemed to have more importance, really, than it had done in the past. And you not only, made fun of topical people and events, but it also informed you about them as well. And I think really realising that you could have a kind of literate kind of comedy and sort of informed comedy was kind of very influential in making it something that you felt was worth doing.
John Cleese.
I think intelligence played an enormous part, but I don't think education was very important. For example, two of the brightest people I ever met were Frank Muir and Dennis Norden. I don't think they had vast formal education. They were hugely intelligent.
Eric Idle.
Well, I think history is the most. I think everybody Terry did history, Mike did history, I did history up to A-level. I think when people say it's undergraduate humour, I think they're wrong. It's postgraduate humour. By the time we're writing Python, we've all been through Cambridge or Oxford.
I went to Occidental. Cool.
How did the writers work together? John Cleese.
I had tried early on to play around with the writing relationships, because I thought it would have been enormous fun to have split into different combinations. And for example, Eric and I wrote together Sir George Head.
Yeah.
And Hitler in Mindhead, do you remember that?
Mm-hmm.
I think that was Mike and me.
Sunday, August the 3rd, this is 69. John C. rang up in the morning to ask if I felt like working in the afternoon. So I ended up in Knightsbridge about 3 o'clock. It's funny, but when one has written in partnership almost exclusively for the last 3 years, as Terry and I have done, and I suppose John and Graham as well, it requires quite an adjustment to write with somebody different. Terry and I know each other's ways of working so well now, exactly what each one does best, what each one thinks, what makes each of us laugh. But when I sat down to write with John, there was a moment's awkwardness, a slight embarrassment. It soon loosened up, and we embarked on a saga about Hitler, von Ribbentrop and Himmler, Bimmler, being found in a seaside guest house. We do tend to laugh at the same things, and working with John is not difficult, but there are still differences in our respective ways of thinking, not about comedy necessarily, which means that the interchange of ideas was a little more cautious than it is with Terry. However, by the time I left at 7:15, we had almost 4 minutes' worth of sketch written.
As a writer, Eric Idle was very much a loner who rarely collaborated with the others.
I don't like it much. I did write a couple of things with John, which were quite, which I found equally as frustrating, because with John, you know, I like to throw ideas down and then sort them into a shape afterwards. I like to come up with an idea, bash it all down, and then get some shape in it afterwards. Whereas John is very linear and very controlled, you know, and you'd have an idea for a sketch, and he said, so he comes to the door and he says what? And you go, well, you know, he says hello. He said, well, maybe he should say good morning. Okay, well, good, or no, how about he says hi? Yeah, okay. So he comes to the door. No, I know, here's a good, he says good morning, I'm sorry. So you never get, I'm always like dashing on to get through the meat and the end of it, and he's always bit by bit. So he worked best with Graham, or with somebody more passive he works best with, I think. But we did write, I think, some funny stuff. We wrote the man who does that, you know, the mountaineering sketch. And we did I think we did the Bruces together. And I think we wrote a song. I think Eric with Half a Bee was him and me, sometime on location in Germany.
And now for something completely different. You know, I never got to say that. Eric was the first one to say it. Eric was the first one. That's interesting.
And now for something completely different. A man with 3 buttocks.
Good evening. I have with me Mr. Arthur Frampton, who has... Mr. Frampton, I understand that you, as it were, have... well, let me put it another way. I believe, Mr. Frampton, that whereas most people have a tool, you...
I'm sorry?
Ah, yes, I see. Are you quite comfortable?
It's fine, thank you.
Mr. Frampton, vis-a-vis your rump.
I beg your pardon?
Your rump.
What?
Your posterior. Derriere. Sit upon.
What's that?
Buttons.
Oh, me bum!
Well, Mr. Frampton, I understand, Mr. Frampton, that you have a 50% bonus in the region of what you said.
I've got 3 cheeks.
Yes. Splendid.
I love the man with 3 buttocks. Yeah, the 2 sheds of Jacks. Well, what can I say? It makes me laugh still. It's like all these things, like 2 sheds and the man with 3 buttocks. The idea was silly. The performance really made them. And the performance had to be this, you had to have this gravitas. And Arthur 2 sheds had to believe in the importance of having 2 sheds. And the man with 3 buttocks had to be aware that he didn't want the camera around the back where you might see his extra buttock. Not in a silly way at all. You know, he had to be very serious about it. I think that's when people talk about Python just being silly. In fact, it was extremely well performed sometimes. And if there was any sort of sniggering in it, if we ever played it as though we thought it was funny that someone should have an extra shed, it wouldn't have worked, really. That's my theory, and I'm sticking to it.
No, I think that's you're right.
The Lumberjack Song.
I certainly remember the day when we wrote the Lumberjack song. Well, we were up here, writing over in that room, and got this idea for the barber who was dangerous or homicidal maniac who couldn't bear blood, but you know, and blades and all that, totally unsuitable barber. And just, I remember it went on, and we just couldn't get out of it. We knew, cutting. We'd got as far as that as we could. What do we do? And my memory is that within about half an hour, at the very end of the day, from sort of 7:15 to 7:15, suddenly, you know, we improvised this ending in which he suddenly got up and said, I don't want to do this anyway, I want to be a lumberjack. And the lumberjack thing and the song was written all in about half an hour at the end of the day. Maybe it was honed a little bit.